Tom Cotton of Arkansas with Little Urban Meyer. We aim to be the best on the Hugh Hewitt Show, Senator. I'm just curious whether or not that sort of imagery obtains when you're watching college football in the Cotton household.
Well, good afternoon, Hugh. And I guess I should say evening, Grace.
Evening, Grace.
Congratulations to an afternoon time slot. I will confess that my son decided to root for Texas over Ohio State the other night. But he has sound logic, since he's normally a Arkansas Razorback fan. He said, I'm going to go for Texas because they gave the most votes for Donald Trump.
Well, that's sound logic. Bad football, but sound logic. And I got to tell him, you got to go with Coach Meyer. If you want to be the best, you got to just make it your goal. Senator, you've got confirmation hearings this week, becoming very serious very quickly. Will your nominees get to the floor quickly? And you're on Intel and Armed Services and Judiciary. I don't think Judiciary has any doubt at all that Pam Bondi is going to be confirmed. How about Pete Hegseth and you got Ratcliffe, you've got all sorts of people.
Yeah, well, so first few correction, you've made the change in the new year to evening drive time. I've made the change by leaving the Judiciary Committee and joining the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. So I will not be there for the hearings of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, though I expect them to do very well in those hearings. I will be there this week for Secretary of Interior nominee Doug Burgum and Secretary of Energy nominee Chris Wright. I expect both of them to do great in those jobs, too. But for me, on the Armed Services Committee, we do expect to have Pete Hegseth tomorrow, and then I'll be chairing the Intelligence Committee hearing on Wednesday for John Ratcliffe. I think Director Ratcliffe is likely going to be a first-day confirmation. Obviously, that takes some cooperation from the Democrats, and I hope they will cooperate with us on those who clearly have the votes on a bipartisan basis, like Director Ratcliffe will, like Senator Rubio will, like Congresswoman Stefanik will. There may be a few others as well. Let's suffice to say, I suspect Pete Hegseth's nomination will not be met so kindly by the Democrats, so we may have to grind that one out along with some others next week, but that's what we're committed to doing.
What is the feeling about Tulsi Gabbard at DNI? Is it looking rocky or is it looking smooth?
Well, you've probably seen over the weekend that Senator Lankford announced that he would be supporting her because she has made clear that she supports Section 702 of FISA. That's an important tool that our intelligence agencies use to monitor foreign persons and foreign countries. It's not about American citizens or even foreigners in the United States, but foreign persons in foreign countries. So, for instance, terrorists in Yemen who are talking to their paymasters back in Tehran, she said that while she voted against it in Congress, given the protections we adopted in the last reauthorization in 2024, she now is comfortable with the program. She will implement the program, and she will support its reauthorization in 2026 when it's next due. So we'll be having that hearing soon as well, as all the other committees will be having them. There's a little bit of a hiccup last week, Hugh, because the agency that manages the paperwork for financial conflicts and other potential conflicts was closed for 3 of the 5 days due to the snowstorm and Jimmy Carter's funeral, but I expect we'll work through that promptly. And as I said, the Republican senators are going to be on the clock next week working to process Donald Trump's nominees as quickly as we can.
Well, Senator, if I can plant a question in the hearing for Governor Burgum, who I expect will be confirmed very, very easily. So it's really a question about policies. California's on fire, and it's devastating, and it's close to where I live, and we have refugees living with us in our home because they had to get out, and their home's not burned down yet. But this was all avoidable. It's ridiculous to argue that it wasn't. A lot of it has to do with the Endangered Species Act, both federal and state, with the California Coastal Commission, a whole bunch of agencies and groups out here. There is a tool, though. The Department of Interior can authorize the clearing of coastal sage scrub and of undergrowth with a national 10A for the purposes of fire prevention. Will you press the incoming Secretary of Interior, who controls the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, on developing and issuing such a permit?
Well, Hugh, I don't want to speak for Governor Burgum, but let's just say I suspect it won't be a matter of pressing him. It will be a matter of allowing him to articulate his views on these matters. I saw Gavin Newsom over the weekend, Hugh, say that these fires might be the worst natural disaster in American history, and I have to disagree, Hugh. They may be the worst man-made disaster in American history because it is the ideological policies of California liberals that have caused fires in California to once again rage out of control. Look, as you know, forest fires have been endemic to California and especially the LA basin for centuries, since Europeans first arrived there. But over the course of the 20th century, through prudent forestry practices, the harvesting of timber regularly, clearing of underbrush, we made great gains in reducing the devastation caused by these fires. We've lost almost all those gains over the last 25 years because of the liberals that you just cited that are in charge, the governor, the mayor, the Coastal Commission, and others who are misusing the law and policy and putting all Californians at risk, whether you have a multi-million-dollar mansion in Pacific Palisades or whether you are a homeless person. We've seen the pain and suffering that these fires have caused, and the people of California deserve a lot better than what they've gotten from the liberals in charge in California.
Now, Senator, this is complicated, but my audience has heard me talk about before. The groups are the Endangered Habitats League, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Coastal Sage Scrub Conservancy, the Sea and Sage Audubon Society, the Spirit of the Sage Council, the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. There are so many NIMBY groups out here that do not want to touch anything. Do you think they ought to be liable? This is so beyond people's comprehension how devastating this is. Do you think the groups that stopped us from the effective equivalent of mowing the grass ought to be liable in part?
Well, I certainly suspect a lot of those displaced Californians who have had their homes, in many cases their life savings, go up in flames, might like to see them liable. And I want to bring your listeners' attention to a story that was in, of all places, the New York Times, just recently, about the so-called snail darter in Tennessee, which was supposedly discovered as a distinct species to stop the construction of a dam by the Tennessee Valley Authority. They delayed it so long it took an act of Congress to exempt it. They now, all the activists and the so-called scientists have now admitted that little fish is not a distinct species, and it was never endangered whatsoever, that it was done for, quote, downstream conservation purposes. You had left-wing activists stopping reasonable development for an energy project, as they do on many other infrastructure or housing developments, by literally inventing a species that they could have used to invoke the Endangered Species Act. So I think the Trump administration needs to go back and look at every single endangerment finding, given the fact that these left-wing activists have just confessed on themselves.
And add to that list the California gnatcatcher, the Stevens kangaroo rat, and every kind of fairy shrimp that you can imagine, and that's why we haven't mowed the proverbial grass. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you. Hope you're rooting for the Buckeyes on next Monday. I'll talk to you again next week on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back.